I just realized, wow, I've been lied to about everything. My entire perspective growing up black and feeling like I had to root my identity in my blackness was really just a sham. And it was taught to me for strategic purposes is what I look back at it as.
So what were some of the stuff you were working on as a BLM activist? Like, what were you doing?
So I was online advocating a lot. Like, I wasn't like a huge name as a BLM activist, but I was definitely helping organize some local events. I was always posting on Instagram about, oh, like, this is racist. This is what a microaggression is. Like, pretty much teaching people to look at every single thing as racist. And when I look back at those old videos and clips that I had, I just cringe.
Oh, man.
There's nothing. The left organizes so much better.
Oh, yeah.
Just infinitely better.
But it was like, it was mainstream and popular, so it was easy, I'd imagine, right? Like, you turn on the news and they're telling you exactly what you want to hear.
Well, 2020, it was. It definitely wasn't 2020. Before that, it still was, people were leaning towards my direction, or they couldn't tell me I was wrong because they still, even before George Floyd, didn't want to be called racist. But at the time, yeah, I didn't have much pushback, and I would have conversations with conservatives and people on the other side of the aisle. And it was interesting that I didn't get the hatred that I now receive being on the other side, like being a conservative and trying to have these exact same conversations with liberals. They don't want to talk to me, or if they do talk to me, it's such an angry conversation that's so based in emotion that it's so hard to get logic into the conversation.
So you're watching these Candace Owens video. You mentioned that she made the argument that the black community, how did you describe it? Lowest common denominator.
Yeah, we take the lowest common denominator and make that the forefront of our community. You still see that today. Look at people like Cardi B put on the pedestal that she's on. That's terrifying. You have a stripper who notoriously was drugging men and robbing them and doing all these different things. And guess who decides to interview her? Joe Biden. Joe Biden wants to give her a platform because that's how he feels that he can reach the black and Hispanic communities. And that's very telling on how the left views people of color, that he went and got someone that was borderline illiterate to be the person to convey his different talking points.
I do think it's fair to point out, though, I think everybody elevates the lowest common denominator because it sells. But that being said, I mean, if you compare Cardi B and Joe Biden is corrupt and crooked and represents like the worst of American political class, as is Hillary Clinton. And then here he is sitting with Cardi B. I mean, I think in that respect, I like Cardi B more than Joe Biden. I mean, hasn't she come out and said some stuff that's actually fairly based?
She did call out the Dalai Lama for the weird stuff about. Yeah, she did. She did say that was weird. So she's got that going for her.
She said a couple different things. Didn't she like call out
inflation
and stuff like that?
She's like, my grocery bill has gone up by like 500%. Yeah.
I think she might just be like. I think the issue is not so much Cardi B, but you're right in the elevation of like. Lowest common denominator stuff, or I should say Candace Owens was right. So what, when you heard that pissed you off because you didn't believe it, or what?
It did, because then I started thinking specifically about George Floyd at the time. And when you look back at his character and the kind of person he was, and even just the tragedy of what happened to him, when you look back at all of that, what about him was worth putting him on murals, putting him on all these buildings when you drive through these cities? People have tattoos of George Floyd. There's probably going to be streets named after him if there aren't already.
It's creepy. I'm from Minnesota, so I'm from that area, right? Oof. And it's weird, too, because you think about it, and I'm like, if you get a tattoo of somebody like that, if you haven't at least done a cursory look into like their social media history, like you are owned by the media. Like if you're going to get somebody tattooed on you, or you're going to evangelize someone to that level, right? You should at the very least have a general understanding. You could make the argument that, look, I'm not tattooing him, I'm tattooing what his death represents. You could make that argument. I still think it's a bad argument. It's weird, but you should at least look into what they're doing. Most people aren't. They don't realize it, and they're not looking any deeper into it.